This, my friends, is the Kingpin doom loop, the financial equivalent of a stampede. Once trust evaporates, it accelerates into a crisis. So this, my friends, is the intermediary doom loop. Welcome to part 2 of our 5-part series on the 5 doom loops of a financial crisis. And you can kind of think of the global financial system like a massive suspension bridge. It looks solid, it looks engineered, it looks permanent, but every bridge has stress points, places where pressure concentrates, where a single crack can ripple through the entire structure. So in this 5-part series, obviously, we are going to walk across that bridge together and examine all 5 stress points in the 5 doom loops. That can turn a single crack into a catastrophic collapse. Each doom loop is self-reinforcing cycles that takes a financial shock and amplifies it into a systemic event. They don't operate in isolation, they cascade. So today, we're going to start with the second and probably the most dangerous stress point, the intermediary doom loop. This is the moment when the bridge doesn't just shake, it starts to sway. And if you understand this loop, you understand the ignition point of every modern financial crisis. So this, my friends, is the intermediary doom loop. And that is the financial equivalent of a stampede. One animal gets spooked, then another, and suddenly the entire herd is running, not because of what they see, but because of what they fear. In finance, the herd is made of banks, brokers, clearinghouses, and intermediaries. And when they get spooked, they don't run, they pull back. They hoard cash. They stop lending. They stop trusting. And once trust evaporates, the system doesn't slow down, it accelerates into a crisis. This, my friends, is the Kingpin doom loop because banks are the core intermediaries that create and distribute credit. So what you're looking at here is what happened with interbank lending in 2008. And can you see how quickly that dried up? They don't even report it anymore. So this is a real-time, it was a 2008 example of the intermediary doom loop imploding. This, my friends, is the aerial view of the herd, a tightly packed, interconnected web. This image shows the reality of our financial world, dense, global web of institutions that are all tied together. The modern financial system isn't a neighborhood of separate houses. It's a single apartment building with shared plumbing, shared wiring, and shared foundations. So if one pipe bursts, the water doesn't stay in one unit. It floods the entire building. And that's the world we live in, a world where every institution is tied to every other institution, whether they like it or not. And there is one fault line in the center, and that's the CCP. Every major trade, every derivative, every clearing transaction flows through this one single valve. It's the heart of the system. It's the control room. It's the one place where every pipe connects. So if the CCP is stable, the building stands. If the CCP cracks, the entire structure is at risk. What does that mean for you? That means a major stress point right there because the CCPs are actually owned by the same institution that it guarantees. And here's the part that most people never see. The CCP, again, owned by the same institution, JP Morgan, Goldman, Citibank, Bank of America, Morgan Stanley, BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, and more. They all actually own the CCP that they trade through. And they are responsible, the CCP, they are responsible for bailing out the CCP as the CCP is responsible for bailing that out if something goes wrong. It's a fully closed loop, and it is so dangerous because all of the risk flows through that one central choke point. So here's the problem. When you run all the plumbing through one valve, you don't reduce risk, you concentrate it. All the pressure, all the flow, all the stress built in one place. And when that choke point is overloaded, the pressure doesn't release gently. It explodes outward. This is the intermediary doom loop, a single choke point carrying the weight of the entire global financial system. One choke point. So let me show you how it impacts you, because this is the Yale study of custodial ownership. It might be your perception that you own stocks, bonds, annuities, all of this intangible stuff. This Yale study reveals the deeper structure, because all fiat money assets held in street name, your stocks, your bonds, your ETFs, and more, are legally registered to Seed and Company, which is owned by the same major banks. You are not the legal registered owner. You are simply a beneficial owner. But every single intermediary between you and Seed and Company can use the same collateral. It's called hypothecation. And that collateral is your equity to support their own obligations. Your wealth is interconnected with the entire system, whether you realize it or not. But you do need to know, because ignorance does not make you immune. It just leaves you vulnerable. So when one fails, my goodness, they all fail together. The CCP absorbs the shock, then pushes it back out to every member, which weakens them, which sends more stress back into the CCP. Do you see that doom loop? It's not a line of dominoes, it's a feedback loop. Here we're looking at Jeffries, and we saw this loop flicker to life because Jeffries, in this most recent episode, took a $715 million hit from the First Brands bankruptcy. One company, one exposure, one crack. But the market didn't really react to First Brands. It reacted to the whole structure, because when one intermediary takes a hit, everyone wonders, if that crack is visible, how many cracks are still hidden? And that's how the panic begins. Not with facts, but with fear. First Brands debt collapses and the public is exposed. Now you start to see it, because when the next shoe dropped, the First Brands debt collapsed, those bonds, they went to zero. And who was holding that debt? Institutional funds. Jeffries manages funds, UBS O'Connor, Millennium, Marathon, Redwood, many funds that back this and that bought into these bonds. And who do they invest for? Pensions, annuities, insurance portfolios, 401ks, IRAs, all of that stuff. Your money, the public's money, the retirement system's money. This is how a corporate bankruptcy becomes a household event, and how you are completely tied into the system in any intangible wealth that you hold. That public exposure to the collapse, well, here's where that part hits home. The major holders of First Brands debt weren't retail investors. They were institutional funds. Your money, the public's money, was sitting inside the collapse. And look, it's the contagion, right? The stability of the global financial system is once again under scrutiny as mounting pressures on U.S. regional banks, particularly those with significant exposure to commercial real estate. And those ignite fresh fears of contagion. On October 16, 2025, a dramatic sell-off in regional bank stocks triggered by unexpected loan-related disclosures from key players sent shockwaves across the financial markets, underscoring the precarious balance within the sector. This renewed volatility has intensified concerns that isolated issues could rapidly escalate, potentially spreading beyond the national borders and impacting international financial stability because of the interconnected relations that I showed you earlier. And that brings us to Jamie Dimon's famous line, because there are always cockroaches. And if you see one, you know that there are more. And in a tightly interconnected system, one failure, it's never just one failure. It's a signal, a warning. It's the first visible insect in a wall that's already hollowing from the inside. And that is the intermediary doom loop. The moment when the system stops behaving like a machine and starts behaving like a living organism under stress. When a system this interconnected starts to shake, you don't want to be standing on it. Banks, CCPs, shadow lenders, even the new crypto experiments, they're all still built on the same fragile foundation of leverage, counterparty risk, and confidence. So when the bridge sways like it is now, when one crack becomes many, resilience doesn't come from betting on the next innovation inside the system. It comes from stepping outside the system and into sound money. Sound money doesn't depend on blockchain, a bank, or a bailout. Gold and silver are the solid ground beneath the storm. And that's where real resilience begins. But it's not the only thing you need. You have to have surety and resilience in food, water, energy, security, barterability, wealth preservation, community, and shelter. And that's what Zang Enterprises is all about. And that's what our sound money strategy is all about. And we don't just have to come together in local community to create that surety for ourselves. We need to reach across the waters and demand on a global basis sound money, redeemable gold back in our financial system again. One person can't do it, but together we can do anything. And I know that together we can make a positive difference for the entire world. And until next we meet, please be safe out there. Bye-bye.